Hello, my friends. Rob Roselli coming to you once again on my Facebook page, Rob Roselli 1, website boxofsunglasses.com. Today being Tuesday, November 22nd, 2016. A lot going on in the world. And once again, the website boxofsunglasses.com. One word. Email info@boxofsunglasses.com and Twitter @RobRoselli. In the last several shows, we've spent going through my link, the Occult Conspiracy. Okay, now when you page through on a website, a table of contents, you can see it for yourself. It's actually page 9, and what it does is it goes through. It's kind of the focal point, or the kind of the hub of the whole website. Okay, because from there you can branch out to the other links. But what we did discuss, the key point, just to go through, we discussed the serpent climbing the tree of life. Okay, which maybe we'll review that in a little bit too, because that's very important. Because now we're going back to Genesis 3, and oddly enough, to kind of bridge the gap between the Bible and reality. And news and current events and what's going on here right now. Interestingly enough, there are connections between the Hillary Clinton campaign and these Podestas, John and Tony Podesta. Okay, Hillary's henchmen, these despicable creatures. Apparently there's a budding in the so-called alternative news, and I'm not saying this is true right now, and it's hard to keep up with all this information, but apparently there's a lot of occult ritual going on. Things of a real sick nature, like pedophilia, child sex rings, and all kinds of information that was in that huge email dump by WikiLeaks in the last several weeks. Okay, that's coming out now. I've always said that our occult leaders are nothing but a bunch of Luciferian, Satan-worshipping weirdos, power-hungry, blinded by the devil pharaohs like Pharaoh Barry Obama, this ghost, this multi-named image in the White House right now. Okay, but apparently it goes even much deeper than that. Okay, and I just can't keep up with everything. Okay, it's hard to keep up with this stuff if you YouTube it. I think it's called the pizza scandal or something like that. Hillary Clinton pizza scandal. You can Google it or YouTube it, and you'll probably get hits. If you want to look into it yourself, I just don't have the time. I work full time, okay, and between keeping up with the Bible, which is by itself is infinite, okay. You can never understand it or read it all or figure it all out, okay. So between a full-time job and that, and just keeping up with current events in general and tying everything together, I'm pretty much swamped. But that's something that's worth looking into, because it does tie together a lot of information that we've been covering on the past shows, like the Occult Conspiracy. Okay, and let me just say this, we'll circle back around to this conversation. Don't forget, my 3 basic principles are always applicable here. Okay, and that is principle number 1 is that the Bible is the infallible Word of God. Okay, Old Testament, New Testament, the 66 books of the Bible. Okay, 39 old, 27 new. There's no debating that. Okay, that's not open to interpretation. It cannot be. Okay, if you like Jesus, if you pass yourself as the way, the truth, and the life, John 14, that's it. Okay, that may sound intolerant, it may sound closed-minded, but that's right. Okay, if you think about it, we're all intolerant. Everybody's intolerant, even these so-called quote liberals. Which is a joke, because you're kind of seeing their tolerance. Liberalism implies freedom and tolerance, but as soon as they don't get their way, you're seeing their tolerance on full display as we speak. You can just watch it on the news. Anyway, so that's number 1. Number 2 is that the nation of Israel are not God's chosen people. Okay, just get that out of your minds. Quit listening to the Trinity Broadcasting Network and these other bozos that insist that that's what the Bible says, and God can't break His covenant, going all the way back to Genesis chapter 12, he makes a covenant with Abraham. Okay, there's so much in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. As a matter of fact, the word New Testament means New Covenant. Okay, Jesus, remember, the Last Supper. Okay, says, "This is the blood of my new covenant, which is going to be shed for you." Concurrently, okay, Satan had entered into Judas Iscariot, who went over and scurried over to the Pharisees, God's chosen people, covenanted with them. Satan, essentially the son of perdition. Jesus calls John the son of perdition in John chapter 17. So the son of perdition, which is really, equates to Satan, goes and makes a covenant with the Pharisees, right after Jesus asks them how they can avoid being condemned to hell and children of the devil in John chapter 8. And this is God's chosen people. Okay, and I'm barely scratching the surface. All right, and again, I'm not being anti-Semitic. I'm not anti-Israel. I'm not one of these Zionists, Zionist Jewish conspiracy people. I'm just speaking from a strictly biblical standpoint. And there will be a remnant of Jews saved at the end. Okay, and again, this is covered in Ezekiel chapter 36. And yeah, I understand the reestablishment of Israel in 1948 was a divine event. Okay, but again, that's all summed up in Ezekiel 36. It's got nothing to do with Israel being God's chosen people. Okay, it's more to do with God trying to preserve his own image and his own name. Okay, to divinely reinvigorate, okay, and basically regather Jews from around the world in the nation of Israel in 1948. Okay, so but that's that. Okay, I don't want to go off on a tangent right now, and of course, it segues in the third basic principle, which is very relevant in current events, by the way, and we can see these current events all kind of conglomerating around this principle, and that is that the United States is without a doubt the mystery Babylon of Revelation 17 and 18. Okay, and again, there's a link to that on the website boxofsunglasses.com. You can read all about it, and also we did several videos where I went through line by line, okay, of Revelation 17 and 18. And these videos are available if you go to my homepage. There's, of course, this channel, the Not Fox News Network, because you're not going to hear the stuff on Fox News like the dumping of U.S. Treasuries wholesale as we speak, which is going to resulting in an impending economic calamity of biblical proportions, which you'll hear on the Not Fox News Network. But anyway, you can go on my YouTube channel, and the descriptions are there. And there's several shows talking about line by line why the United States. There's no doubt that the United States is the mystery Babylon of Revelation 17 and 18. And the scenario spelled out there, when properly interpreted, breaks down just like current events. So in other words, you have the world turning against the whore, which is the United States, wanting to burn her with fire, which represents an EMP and or / nuclear surprise nuclear attack on these very United States, which is becoming more and more likely as the world just is sick and tired of our warmongering and our economic terrorism. Okay, this organization known as the Federal Reserve Bank and its sister organizations, the IMF, the Bank of International Settlements, etc., the global loan sharking operation, and a scam known as the Federal Reserve. Between those two things, people, especially Russia and China, are leading this charge, or are sick and tired of the United States, okay, and our bullying around the world, and our endless war on terror, okay, which is just creating power vacuums all over the Middle East, okay, and this sort of thing. So when you take off the blinders of the stupidity of the Jewish temple and this comic book antichrist, there's some guy, some Damien from the Omen, showing up in some rebuilt temple in Jerusalem in a 7-year tribulation, and also the stupidity that these so-called, biblical experts keep selling, keep peddling their wares. Then you can open up your mind to what's really going on. Okay, that is, a lot of Revelation is meant to be taken figuratively. Okay, I know I'm probably in a minority when I say that, but then, if that's the case, then, then sit around and wait for your comic book antichrist and your in your microchip or your micro stamp or whatever, your 666 micro stamp, and also their nonsense. Okay, these people completely miss. Really, they completely miss like 2,000 years of church history from the birth and death of Christ to today. Okay, with those kinds of interpretations, and they miss current events and what's about to happen here. Okay, so those are the three principles: the Bible, Israel's not God's chosen people, and number three, the United States is no doubt the mystery Babylon of Revelation 17 and 18. Okay, so now getting back to this occult nature of this nation. Okay, and let me just say this again. I'm not one of these, people that ascribes to the foundation of this nation as part of the Occult Conspiracy. There are many people out there who would insist that the United States is part of it and it was founded by Illuminati and Freemasons and all this sort of thing. And I understand. Look, Benjamin Franklin. Okay, there's a few of the founders that are questionable. Okay, but I'll say it and I'll say it again. The organic, dyed-in-the-wool, everyday American and your lesser-known founders were no doubt fundamentalist Christians. Okay, it's reflected in our Constitution. It's reflected in our Declaration of Independence. It's reflected in the original founding documents, okay, of the Pilgrims that came here in 1620, called the Mayflower Compact. Okay, all the Northwest Ordinance. All these documents are of a distinct Christian nature. Okay. And you can't tell me that all this effort to expunge and eviscerate this nation's Christian founding is an accident. Okay, so in other words, if the United States, the foundation of the United States, and I'm not talking about the United States today, and we'll get to that in a second, but if the very foundation of the United States, the Constitution, was part of the Occult Conspiracy, then why the hell are these people? I mean, the J.P. Morgans, the Rockefeller Foundation, and all these other people, why are they spending so much effort trying to get rid of it and its history? Okay, they're real conspirators. So it's really a stupid argument, and it really is nonsense. And I find it quite nauseating that people would attempt, even some of my fellow conspiracy kooks that are out there would try to make this claim. I guess it sells books, or it sounds good, or it fits some kind of dialogue or whatever. But be that as it may, okay. If you advance a few years, then you can see the occult conspiracy taking over this once great nation. Now, when I say the United States, as it exists today, and this whore that in Revelation 17 and 18, I don't consider this United States as it exists today as my nation. Okay, my nation is the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and all that. This Federal Reserve Corporation owned by the Rockefeller / Rothschild / Soros, Kissinger, Brzezinski, and the rest of these banksters is nothing but a Federal Reserve Corporation with a mercenary army. Okay, that's all this country is anymore. All right, and I don't consider what exists today that's called the United States this Fox News scam, these neocon war maniacs. This isn't my nation, okay? But anyway, so just to bring things into focus here, okay, now here's my first book, okay? It's available as a PDF. So you can see the occult conspiracy right here, okay, again, the Great Pyramid of Giza. And we're going to look at this symbolism a little bit more as the show goes on. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the all-seeing eye of Apollo, Osiris, or Nimrod. And yes, that's your Federal Reserve note. This is St. John's the Divine Cathedral right here in my candidate for Mystery Babylon, which would be New York City. Okay. And then the second book, okay, we talked about this on last week's show, The Un-American Genocidal Complex. Okay, the Georgia Guidestones with the Anti-10 Commandments. Okay, brought to us by Robert Christian. Okay, who, again, is a euphemism for Rose Cross, or the rose plus the cross, okay, the squaring and the circle. Now remember these terms, because we're going to get back to these terms in a few minutes here. Squaring the circle, okay, the male plus the female, okay, the phallus of Osiris sticking out of the ground as the whore goddess Isis, not to get too pornographic, but This is similar to the language in Ezekiel 23. If you want to read Ezekiel 23, it kind of illustrates what I'm talking about. But in a spiritual sense, that's exactly what was going on in the Old Testament. Okay, and where do we see this symbolism today? The rose plus the cross. And I'm diverging a little bit, but don't forget the male plus the female. Now, the rose represents the male of the Osiris or secrecy, or the Occident or the West, or the setting sun, representative of the dead sun god Osiris, the king of the North, okay, which would ring some bells for people that are familiar with Old Testament prophecy, will rise again, okay, and he's represented by, again, the Occident or the West, with a setting sun. Now, of course, he impregnates Isis, who is also known, the female goddesses Diana, Artemis, Libertas, Statue of Liberty, or Columbia. Now, when these two get together, okay, they have a son called Horus, which just so happens to be the pharaoh of ancient Egypt. Every pharaoh was considered a manifestation of Apollo and Osiris, the male plus the female, the rose plus the cross. This is also represented, the Gaotu, the great architect of the universe, is the secret god of the Freemasons. So you can see geometry is very important to the Freemasons. Now, what's geometry? 3, 4, 5 triangle is the middle of geometry. Now, these three entities that I just described, Osiris, Isis, or Libertas, or Columbia, and Horus, or the pharaohs, represented, that's the three, is the upright or the erect phallus is Osiris, okay, and the horizontal or the female is represented by Isis, or the 4. So you got the 3, the 4. Now you connect the 2, male plus the female. You have the 5. You have the son of God, or you have the pharaoh, as in Pharaoh Barry. Okay. Now Pharaoh Barry just happens to be the 44th president of the United States, and 44 just happens to be the sacred number of Horus. Okay, who I just said is the son of the sun god Isis and Osiris, or Occident and Columbia. And of course, where did Pharaoh Barry go to school? Supposedly Occidental University, of which there is no record of him ever having gone there, and Columbia, and there's no record of him ever having even set foot on the campus of Columbia University. So we have the 44th president, who has multiple names, multiple places of birth, no college background, who we're told went to Columbia and Occidental University. Of all the 2 colleges to pick in the United States, we're supposed to believe that's a coincidence. So you could see why I call Pharaoh Barry, because just like the pharaoh of ancient Egypt, he represents the unification of the male plus the female in this occult land known as the United States of America. Okay, with his Egyptian high priests of finance and mystery religions, Rockefeller, Soros, Rothschild, and the rest of them behind him pulling the strings. Okay, so this is what Trump is facing. Okay, well, just to get back to the un-American genocidal complex, how does this manifest itself in reality? It's all covered here and fully documented. As I stated last week, okay, Hitler was a result of this effort, of this occult death cult, okay, that runs the world, that has always run the world since the Garden of Eden. Okay, now this is just a snapshot of that, quote, conspiracy. Okay, so we can see the pervasiveness of the conspiracy. And when you read this and you realize, okay, Hitler was good for what, 20 million deaths. If you throw in World War II, his share of World War II, maybe it's another 30 million, so he's at 50 million. Okay, you throw in, you spike the smallpox vaccine with the AIDS virus. Okay, what's that worth? Another 50 to 100 million. The environmental movement, okay, with the scam global warming, diverting massive amounts of farmland for this corn-based ethanol scam. I don't know what that's worth. Maybe another 10, 20 million. It's child's play. Okay, it's nothing. Okay, it's nothing. Okay, to these people. I'm talking about documenting here. I'm talking about north of 100 million deaths, and I'm telling you, it's child's play to these people. Okay, because when anti-Ten Commandments are talking about a 90% reduction in the population. Okay, now you're into the billions. Okay, now you're out of the fractions of a million or a billion, excuse me. Covered in this book. Now you're well into the billions. Well, how are you going to do that? Yeah, throw in abortion. Margaret Sanger's Negro Project. Okay, Margaret Sanger's Negro Project. Okay, who runs the Margaret Sanger Award? But Hillary Clinton. Okay, the abortion Barbie, Queen Jezebel herself, collects the Margaret Sanger Award, and Margaret Sanger, in her own words, wanted abortion to eliminate the black population in this country. Okay, so these assholes, these stupid college kids out there calling Trump a Nazi, and calling Trump supporters whatever, fascist, and Trump's Hitler, and all this, you stupid assholes. And excuse my French, but you're taking money from George Soros. I just watched a 60-minute clip that's out there now. Okay, George Soros basically admits in his on national TV to being a Nazi collaborator, or a nationally televised show. I don't know if that ever actually made it onto the 60 Minutes, national show, but there he is getting interviewed by one of those 60 Minutes hacks. I forget the guy's name, but you can look it up, InfoWars or whatever. It's there now. But there's Soros, a Nazi collaborator, and proud of it, admitting to, camouflaging himself as a Christian and selling out his own fellow Jews in Hungary. Okay. A Nazi collaborator is responsible for funding these people, these jobless idiots running around protesting, and they're trying to get Hillary, and anybody that opposes them is called a racist and whatever, and they're trying to get Hillary into the presidency, and Hillary, who collects the Margaret Sanger Award, who in her own words hated black people and didn't even want to see them euthanized when they were alive, or institutionalized, like many of the American eugenics who supported this guy, okay, Adolf Hitler. Margaret Sanger took it a step further and wanted them killed before they were even born, talking about Negroes in her own words. Hillary Clinton takes the Margaret Sanger Award, okay? This is how stupid these people are, okay? And as I said on last week's show, there's no way this many people can be this stupid without the Bible being true. I mean, passages like in 2 Corinthians 4:4, where God, where the Apostle Paul says that, Satan has blinded the eyes of so many people in this world, okay? And that's in accordance with my favorite movie, They Live, John Carpenter's They Live, okay? Because you remember from that movie, who really discovered the Occult Conspiracy? But it was a small Christian church in Los Angeles, okay? So John Carpenter was onto something there. But anyway, just getting back to the point, okay? So 100 million deaths, courtesy covered in this book, The Un-American Genocidal Complex, doesn't even begin to cover what these things call for, is a 90% reduction in the world's population. Now, how are they going to do that? Well, really, the quickest way to do it, it's not through abortion, okay? Not through Hitler, okay? The AIDS virus, corn-based ethanol, they're good. They're good for, fractions of a billion, but they're not going to get you to 5-6 billion you need to make the Earth's population of 500 million people, as anti-commandment number 1 calls for in the Georgia Guidestones. Again, brought to us by Robert Christian, who, as I just said, represents, the combination of Isis and Osiris, the son of Satan, or the 18th or 6 plus 6 plus 6 degree of Freemasonry. Okay, the Rosy Cross degree of the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. Okay, not an accident. Okay, so when the Bible says 666, it's be aware of it. It's the number of a man. There's your man, Robert Christian, and we've covered him, and he's covered, by the way, on my website. There's a whole just eons of information on Robert Christian. He's got his own page dedicated to him. There's several books worth of information alone that I've posted on Robert Christian, okay, who I believe is the Satan talked about in Revelation 13, and the one that walks the earth as a roaring lion, 1 Peter 5:8, looking for souls to devour. Now, of course, he's not literally walking around. It's not a lion walking around the streets called Satan, okay? But it's a figurative speech, because how does he do it? He does it through his agents in the world, known as the Rothschilds, okay? gave us the Rockefellers, who gave us J.P. Morgan, who gave us the Federal Reserve System, which is going to result in the economic calamity that's about to happen, and in fact World War III itself. Okay, and we went over all this, in the last several shows on the Occult Conspiracy. Okay, the link to the Occult Conspiracy, where I talk about 3 world wars. And again, for those of you that are paying attention, we've only had 2 world wars. Okay, so this psychopathic drive for World War III is being driven by people they're just death merchants. There's no bottom to them, just like hell itself, or Tartarus, or Sheol, or whatever you want to call it, the bottomless pit. There's no bottom. There's no bottom here. Okay. It's just pure evil. There's no way really to get your hands around it without a firm knowledge, and there's no way to kind of deal with it without a firm grounding in the Bible. Okay. There's just 2 ways about it. I mean, we could sit here and we can talk economics and, and bond yields and, dumping U.S. treasuries and all this other sort of thing, which is happening. We are going to have an economic calamity of biblical proportions. But that's only the beginning. Okay? This is pure evil at play here, okay? And Trump ain't going to stop it. Okay? As a matter of fact, Trump's already bringing in people he was calling, Lying Ted and Mitt Romney, that rhino establishment hack. He calls the guy a phony and a fraud and a choker and all this other sort of thing, and now he's going to make him Secretary of State or something. Or he's even considering it. Newt Gingrich, another Fox News neocon, another hack. Newt Gingrich. Who else? Jamie Dimon, okay, a Bilderberg, J.P. Morgan Chase, bankster criminal, Jamie Dimon. Okay, so you get a lot of this. You get, from the so-called Trump revolution, you get a lot of recycled rhino, neocon, Bilderberg hacks. So, plus the fact that I don't get these guys. They insult each other. They call each other these names. Do they really mean it? I mean, it's almost bizarre. Okay, Trump is good in a sense. Yeah, he's bucking the establishment. He's pissing a lot of people off, and he's exposing the press and these stupid college kids for what they are, as a bunch of just immature, ignorant, idiotic hacks. Okay, accepting money from Soros, the Nazi collaborator, and running out and they're calling everybody else Nazis. I mean, and the idiocy is boundless as well there. But be that as it may, I mean, Trump is eliciting, obviously a response and, exposing those people, but Trump's not in control. Trump will never be in control. Okay, as a matter of fact, there's that word they again. Okay, they may be manipulating events, and I believe they are, to make it look like if Trump takes the presidency, it won't last long. Okay, they'll just crash the economy like they did in 1929, the panic of 1907 that induced the Americans and the American politicians to giving us this scam Federal Reserve System. Okay, create a credit crisis. Okay, just bury us in debt as Farrell Barry is doing. And then when the debt gets called and there's too much of it, the economy just collapses. I mean, we can go into very detailed, and you can get the details of what's going on, but the bottom line is, just mathematically, the system we have, this perpetual debt, this perpetual digging yourself deeper and deeper into a hole of debt, mathematically, it has to crash. There's no arguing that point. Okay, it's just math. Okay, just like, remember the Titanic. I mean, Newton's laws, buoyancy, when those laws were violated, mathematically the Titanic had to sink. Okay, the steel is heavier than water. Okay, when the hull of the ship was inundated with the ocean, that ship just mathematically, it had to sink. Okay, it just had to. All right, just that's basic Newtonian physics, laws of buoyancy, etc. Just like when you go into debt, you logically and mathematically, you can't go into debt forever and not have the whole system collapse. Because if you think about it, just to think about this one for a second, if a debt-based system is so great, Rush Limbaugh, okay, if having a debt-based system is what we need, So Congress isn't, coining money. Idiot Limbaugh used to say, conspiracy kooks, the Federal Reserve conspiracy kooks, basically denigrating the Constitution. That, Mr. All-American Limbaugh. But anyway, once you take the power of coining money away from Congress and you give it to a private corporation, it has to crash. And really, when you just think about it, what's the point of having an IRS to collect taxes? Well, why do we need taxes? The government just prints the money and goes into debt. Doesn't matter, right? Just print the money. Debt doesn't matter. Just give everybody in America $1 million. Nobody in America has to work because debt doesn't matter, right? I mean, logically, that's nonsense. But that's exactly what the Federal Reserve System does. But obviously, the reason we have a complicated tax code and the reason we have things like that, and economists and Harvard economists and all this other BS, because without it, then what I just said a minute ago becomes way too obvious. Then it just becomes obvious as to what this really is. The Federal Reserve System really is. It's just one big game of Monopoly, okay? And the bankers, the real-life bankers, your Rockefeller, Morgans, Jamie Dimons of the world, okay, the Rothschilds, okay, they're still around over in Europe. Then they're exposed for who they are, okay, without all this complications and machinations and IRS and tax codes and all this other stuff and people working and so-called economy. Without all that as a facade, then what it boils down to is we're nothing but one big monopoly game. Okay. And again, it's mathematically it has to crash, and mathematically it will crash. And I believe they're going to make it crash on Trump's little shoulders, and then blame it on him. And people in this country are so stupid. I mean, look how many millions are stupid enough to take money from George Soros and go around and call everybody Nazis. They're not going to understand. Those people aren't going to understand. So if you're listening right now, if you're fortunate enough, whether live or I don't know if there's 5 people listening or 5 million, I don't know. Okay. But if you're fortunate enough to be listening right now, just think hard about what I'm saying. Turn off the Fox News. Turn off the idiocy. Pick up a book, hopefully the Bible. My books are available on the site. Okay, and just open your mind and then think about it. Okay, watch John Carpenter's great movie They Live. 90 minutes of marginal acting and low budget theatrics or whatever. But that all that aside, think about what the movie's really saying. What I'm trying to say. Okay, there's no way you can listen to what I'm saying and research hopefully some of these subjects. I realize it's a lot to, people have to work and there's not time to keep up with everything, but just realize that once you put on the sunglasses, there's no turning back. Okay, there's no going back to this scam we call reality. There's no going back to the Fox News imbeciles and taking them seriously if you ever did so in the first place. And I'm not saying, look, I listen to Fox, okay? And there's a few people on there that I would consider worthwhile, that are legit, okay? Men and women, but majority of them are useless mimbos and bimbos, okay? Who don't just smiling and talking nonsense, cooking and garbage. Okay, it's good, yeah, to watch for major events, see what's any major events, earthquakes or natural disasters, terrorist attacks, this sort of thing, whatever. But most of it's just recycled, who's Trump picking in his cabinet, who's going to be this, who's Trump meeting with today. Who cares? What's going on with the gold supply? Why can't why can't the Germans get their gold back from the New York Federal Reserve Bank? Why are the Chinese, why did somebody try to stick the Chinese with fake tungsten bars, supposedly gold, a few years ago? Why hasn't the gold in Fort Knox been audited ever? Okay. Why are the Chinese and Russians, hoarding gold as fast as they can? What's going on in India right now? India's in a serious economic panic. Okay, that's starting to filter through into the news. So the Indian people over there are saying screw you to these so-called economic experts, and they're looking for gold because their currency is about to implode. Okay, so whatever the populate India, I think it's 500 or 600 million. That country's about to go down the tubes. Okay, along with the rest of Europe. The United States isn't far behind. Okay, and again, this debt-based scam known as the Federal Reserve System, it's chaos. It's chaos by design, because you cannot get order. Okay, you cannot get this thing. You cannot get the 500 million, Luciferian heaven. Okay, as represented by the Hebrew god, the Hindu god Shiva. Okay, who represents, it was equivalent to Horus, who I mentioned before, or Hermes, the Greek god of wisdom and travel and logic, called Hermes. Okay, who I believe again is the real Satan, or Robert Christian. That manifestation that is Shiva. But anyway, he's the god of destruction and creation. So destruction, get rid of 90% of the world's population, and then he's going to rebuild in this Luciferian heaven with 500 million people populating the earth, minus again 6 or 7 billion of us imbeciles. Now, how are you going to, again, you can start the process with with an AIDS-laced smallpox vaccine, Adolf Hitler, abortion. But to really juice the machine, really get some killing going, some mass genocide, you need World War III. And this is the chaos, and then the economic chaos, and then just, again, that's the, the god of wine and revelry, Dionysus, or Pan, or the green god, okay, the nature god, which is an offshoot of Osiris. He was also known as the nature god, the god of trees and vegetation. The manifestation that is Pan, where we get the word pandemonium or panic. Okay, and this sort of thing. So this so-called gods of quote mythology, when you start matching it to the Bible, okay, you don't get this, you get this. Okay, and basically what's happening is you're getting the same story from two very different perspectives. Okay, the serpent. Now look, let's just jump into that real quick. Now again, with the WikiLeaks, just to jump back into current events. Now with the WikiLeaks, it's becoming very apparent that a lot of our high-level elites and the lower levels, the one step below them, like the Hillary Clintons and the Bushes of the world. Now the Bushes we've already discussed are, members of this thing, Skull and Bones, where people climb into coffins, to be born again in a satanic kind of way, in a Freemason kind of, you have to be dead and become alive again, okay, and the kind of an anti-born again. Jesus, in Matthew chapter 3, he tells, Nicodemus, you must be born again. He says, can we climb into our mother's womb and be born again? And, Jesus goes into the whole thing, and that's explained in John chapter 3. Of course, John 3:16, for God so loved the world, so he gave his only begotten Son, so whoever believes him shall not perish, but shall have everlasting life, okay? That's John chapter 3. But in a complete mirror image of that, okay, we have the concept of skull and bones, where you climb into a coffin, and that's your being born again. But you're being in a coffin in the ground, okay, and it's symbolic of the rising of what I discussed before, which is the dead god Osiris, where the Freemasons are just many manifestations in symbolism of the dead god Osiris, which, as I explained, another manifestation of that is the Pharaoh of ancient Egypt. Okay, and these are the people that run the nation. Okay, and that, again, it's becoming very apparent in the WikiLeaks that many of our leaders, okay, are worshippers and follow the rituals of Aleister Crowley. Now, Aleister Crowley was a high-level British occultist who's some call the most evil person that ever lived. Okay, and that's saying something. I'm not saying that's true or not. I mean, obviously you got Hitler and Stalin and Mao and these kinds of people, but Crowley just never had the power that these people had, or else potentially he would have been as bad as those people. Okay, but be that as it may, I mean, he was in the middle of something called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And we discussed this book at length in the past, but Aleister Crowley was right in the middle of this mess. Okay, this is one of the cornerstones of the so-called New Age, the New Age movement. So the New Age movement isn't this, flowers and butterflies and ice cream and peace and love and all this other idiocy. When you start digging into the New Age, the age of Aquarius, and this sort of thing, okay, you start out in places like this, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Okay, Hermetic, Hermes, the Greek god Hermes, Shiva, Robert Christian, Horus, okay, Satan, okay, which we just described, okay, and then again, you can see in here, we just showed this before, the serpent climbing the tree of life. Okay, this is right out of Genesis 3. So when I say these people are devil-worshipping Satanists right out of the Garden of Eden, I'm not just saying this for my health, okay? This stuff is here. The information's out there, okay? That's just one example. This book is, almost 600 pages of occult ritual, and apparently one of these occult rituals involves something called a spirit dinner or something. And again, this is what I'm getting from these leaked emails and this WikiLeaks. And apparently what they did is you take semen and breast milk and mixed it together and, threw blood on the wall and had all kinds of weirdos getting together, or Hillary Clinton and the Podestas and who knows who else, drinking this stuff and involved in all this weird stuff. And as I mentioned before, there's this pedophile. And don't forget Hillary Clinton, again, these child sacrifices, modern-day child sacrifice to Gaia and Baal, which was big in the Old Testament, okay, and with cultures like the Aztecs and this sort of thing, okay, the modern-day manifestation of that is the abortion industry sacrificing our babies, controlling the population, especially the Negro population, by sacrificing them to Gaia and Baal, okay, as I mentioned, as I get into in the back of the Un-American Genocidal Complex. Okay, this is what really is going on here. So you can see the occultism is all around us now. Haha, this is all funny. Now here's the U.S. News and World Report. Now I know I've shown this before. Okay, and again, and just for the sake of the argument, here's our great architect of the universe squaring the circle. Okay, what do we see here? We see a great pyramid. What do we see on the back of this thing? A great pyramid with a golden, with gold. Okay, now gold is the goal of alchemy. There's something called immaterial gold. Now, the alchemist, alchemy was the foundation of modern-day chemistry, okay? It was just occultists throughout the ages experimenting with different chemicals, in a literal sense. And in a spiritual sense, what alchemy represents is the building of the golden society or the golden age. And it's described right here in these things, these anti-10 commandments, okay? 10% of the world population gets to live and experience the golden age, okay? Because, again, these people are shot. Remember where these people are shot, okay? They take Lucifer or Satan. They take them seriously. They really think, ye shall be as gods. These people really think they're God, just like Pharaoh did. So now the 10 plagues described in the book of Exodus, now they make a hell of a lot more sense. Not only do they each of those plagues, specifically speaks against a god or a God's symbol. For instance, turning the river, the Nile, blood and killing all the fish is a direct attack on Osiris, okay, the Egyptian god Osiris, and to an extent Isis, because both are associated with the Nile River, okay. So that was huge to the Egyptians, especially to Pharaoh. Now he's listening to his high priest. He's saying that the Nile River is mine. That my father, my dead father Osiris, is under the Nile River. He every August 5th, as aligns with the dog star Sirius, which was huge to the ancient Egyptians. Parentheses. Who was born on August 5th or August 4th, 1961. Okay. Right around the dog star. The day of the rising of the dog star Sirius, but Pharaoh Barry, and it's parentheses and asterisk or whatever. I'm just going a little sidebar here. On the home page of my site, boxofsunglasses.com, you can read much more about this. The parallels between Pharaoh Barry and the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. But anyway, getting back to Exodus and the 10 plagues, this is what God is. This is what he's dealing with. Okay, so by the 10th plague, when he kills the firstborn in Egypt, what he's really talking about is the killing the offspring of Isis and Osiris, or the Pharaoh. When he kills Pharaoh's firstborn, this is really what's at play here. Okay, it's not just some cruel god. He's not just some god, out there, killing people. Like many atheists and so-called liberal college professors want to sit there and say. There's real meaning and symbolism behind this. So when you back and back and you start looking at the big picture, as I've been explaining, okay, these are people that want to see 90% of the world's population dead, because they think that they're equivalent to the Egyptian pharaoh, that they're the enlightened ones. They get to live. They hooked up with Satan. Okay, they have the divine spark, where this enlightenment, or the illuminated eye of Osiris. Okay, and they're only privy. There's only a few are privy to that enlightenment. Okay, the rest of us can just literally go ahead and drop dead. And if we're not going to literally drop dead on our own, they'll help us along with a thermonuclear war. Okay. So anyway, getting back, here's the great architect of the universe, GAOTU, the great architect. Freemasonry, there he is squaring the circle. Okay, remember we talked about this before. The symbol, the Great Pyramid, okay, if you take, this is covered again, I have this covered in links, but if you take the height of the Great Pyramid, okay, and you lay it flat, there's a ratio. The ratio pi pops out between the perimeter of the Great Pyramid and the circumference of a circle that is made by the height of the pyramid, okay. That's the concept of squaring a circle. Now you have the vertical, remember the vertical 3, okay, the phallus of Osiris, and the horizontal, the 4 kingdoms of nature, or Isis, or Mother Earth, or Gaia. Okay, those two get together again, and you have the 5, okay, which is the son of the pharaoh. So you can see this stuff coming together. And by the way, where do we see a 555 tall obelisk of Osiris? Looking straight down the womb, the open womb of capital or capital line, or Libertas, or Columbia, or Isis, right there in Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia. Okay, so you have a 555-foot tall with a 55.5-foot base of a 6,660-inch tall, with a 666-inch base phallus symbol known as the Washington Monument, looking straight at the open, the Capitol building with Minerva, the female goddess, on top. Okay, this is where many quote conspiracy theorists get the idea that this nation was founded on was part of the conspiracy, which is just utter crap, because a lot of these a lot of those structures didn't come about 60 or 70 years after the founders were all dead. But anyway, but be that as it may, that's just what's there. Okay, so you're starting to see the pervasiveness of the occult conspiracy. Okay, now here we have this again. We talked about this in the past. Here's the Invisible College, okay, which was known as the Royal Society in Britain. Okay, they were kind of underground, to avoid being killed by that, that bastion of, Christian love and Christianity, the Catholic Church. And I'm being sarcastic, okay? The Catholic Church, which I find kind of nauseating that people interchange the word Catholic and Christian, quite freely. They're almost synonymous, and they're not, okay? The murderous, sex-crazed, selling indulgence, stealing people from poor people from Europe and, all over the world for 1,000 years, and calling themselves Christians, and burning people at the stake for having the nerve to print and read their own Bibles and this sort of thing. But anyway, so this is the Invisible College, okay, the Royal Society, okay, which morphed into the British Roundtable groups, from where we get our very own Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, the Skull and Bones, the Federal Reserve crowd, all emanated from this thing. And what do we see? This Invisible College, symbolically, what do we see? A rose plus a cross, okay, an Occident plus a Columbia, okay, what do we see flying around in the air? Oh, there's little baby Lucifer with a serpent wrapped around him. There's the unseen hand, 1618, okay, the golden ratio, 1.618, and where does the 1.618 show up? But in the Great Pyramid of Giza, okay, all right. If you basically, what I'm saying is, if you set the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is at a degree of 51.7 degrees, okay, if you set that hypotenuse to 1, 2 numbers pop out, you get pi over 4, which is again represents the ratio of a square formed by the base of the pyramid with a circle, okay, and also you get the golden ratio, as the base, 0.618. Okay, those numbers pop up in the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now remember, now if you're listening to, watching the National Geographic Channel, they come up with all these so-called Egyptologists, which are about as stupid as these economic experts that try to, talk up the Federal Reserve and actually talk about it like it means something. Well, it's just a debt-based scam, as I was saying before. But these idiotic Egyptologists will tell you that, the Great Pyramid of Giza, with the inherent numerical pi and golden ratio, not to mention, the 50-ton blocks that make up the ceiling of the King's Chamber and all the stuff I don't really want to get into right now, but just that alone, okay, supposedly that thing, that was built by, half-ape Neanderthals that just learned to walk and chew gum at the same time. Okay, remember, because, we had evolution, we evolved from, people that were just, they were rubbing rocks together and sticks to make fire and just learned to invent the wheel. Oh, we're going to build this Great Pyramid of Giza. Okay, it just so happens to incorporate numerical pi and the golden ratio, which really, those two numbers sit at the base of reality itself. Okay, you start talking about the golden ratio, you get into spirals, you get into, a baby in the womb, a hurricane, the Milky Way, the shape of a snail, a ram's horn, okay, bee colonies, okay, which is another interesting, Freemasons, like to call themselves bees, coming in and building a nest for their queen bee, which is Isis or Mother Earth or Gaia. Okay, that's another symbol of the, the Freemasons, along with other kinds of insects. And of course, God shoved it right up their ass with the, in the 10 plagues with the flies and the locusts and the gnats and that sort of thing. But anyway, you can, if you go to the Occult Conspiracy link, there is a link in there that said, it'll take you to this numbers link, okay? And a lot of these things that I'm talking about will be covered in that link, okay? If I can get it to... Anyway, or you can go to the table of contents, okay, and you can read about it on the Robert Christian page, okay, which is page 10. You scroll all the way down, you can read about ancient Egypt, and section 13, you can read about it. It's in the numbers, okay, you can go there, and there's the link. They'll talk about pi and the Great Pyramid and all this sort of thing, and that's a, that's a 20 or so page link. Okay, it's quite a long link, and I'm giving a very broad overview, but just the point is that the people running the country, really running the country, not the Trumps or the Bushes or these kinds of people running the world, are really into occultism and devil worship and this sort of thing. Okay, Bohemian Grove. Some of you may have heard about Bohemian Grove, but anyway, so that's the symbolism of this thing. Okay, now Dan Brown and these Da Vinci Code idiots will have you believe, well, that's just, they'll put it in the realm of, borderline comic book and this sort of thing, but no, it's right there. I mean, hopefully I'm making it pretty obvious that this isn't a joke. Okay, there's our friend Hermes Thrice Great, okay, right here. Again, this is U.S. News and World Report, the god of travel, logic, and wisdom, okay, equivalent to Robert Christian or Hermes, okay, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, okay, Aleister Crowley, remember, and this sort of thing. So it all kind of ties together, okay, and it all surrounds us. It's so obvious and so pervasive that it's hidden, okay. And here's another book, the Alchemical Keys to Masonic Ritual, okay. And if you look through here, you can see a lot of the symbolism I was talking about. You may not be able to see these. I'll just point these out to you. Here's this concept again of the skull and bones, the idea of getting in a coffin and being born again. Emblematic of the dead god Osiris, the king of the north, rising. I will rise again, as they all worship their dead god Osiris, Apollo, or Nimrod from the Tower of Babel. Okay, they're all basically equivalent. Okay, so that speaking of that, so have these people accepted the mark of the beast? Okay, you know, when George Bush and John Kerry and the rest of them go to their skull and bones rituals, and they get into a coffin and basically call themselves, you know, the son of Isis, the son of this consummation of the marriage of Isis and Osiris, and come out of this coffin. I mean, of course they have. Okay, did that mean they have that microchipped in their head? No. And the people that follow them, then they become the body of the Antichrist, just like in Colossians chapter 1, 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Okay, you know, we are, you know, the believers are the body of Christ. Romans chapter 12. Okay, the concept's the same. Okay, so that's why I say the mark of the beast. Yeah, there might be a literal manifestation at the very end here, you know, as the economy kind of winds down to nothing, you know, but it's going to be very quick and short-lived, okay? Those people are, you know, again, my analogy is, you know, you're trying to describe a train by focusing on the caboose. I mean, you're missing the whole train. But anyway, there's more of this same symbolism, okay? There's a red lion. Now, that's very interesting. The red lion, okay, is associated here, raising the stone by the lion's paw until there's the red lion, okay? So again, you know, remember Satan, 1 Peter 5:8, Satan as a lion walks about looking who he can devour. Now, who adopted this shield? Whose symbol is this? But the British Rothschild family. You know, the British Rothschild family, you know, basically gave us the Morgans and the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts, okay, and the Carnegies, okay, which in turn were the, you know, the people that gave us this guy, you know, Robert Christian and Adolf Hitler. And he also gave us this thing. J.P. Morgan gave us St. John's of the Divine Cathedral and Mystery Babylon, and the Federal Reserve Note with Osiris, Apollo, Nimrod at the helm. Okay, so here you have the red lion. Okay, right below that, the Philosopher's Stone. You can't really see it, but there's the Philosopher's Stone. Okay, basically what that is, you know, it's as above, you know, so below. But basically what that's saying is going back to the lie of Genesis 3, you know, ye shall be as gods. Okay, you shall be God. It's basically what Satan is saying. You know, don't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which symbolically it means a tree of study of numbers. Okay, and that's illustrated in Matthew 15 and 16. Remember where, you know, where Jesus says, you know, tells the Pharisees, you know, you can discern the signs of, you know, the signs of the sky, but you cannot discern the signs of the time. So what's basically saying is you're into occultism and numerology. And then Jesus, you know, says, you know, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, or the bread of the food of the Pharisees. And, you know, and he scolds the disciples because he thought he was talking about literal bread. He's talking about, no, the doctrine of the Pharisees, which is huge in illustrating what the real meaning of the tree of knowledge of good and evil was, which was the study of numbers. Numbers in creation. How did God create the universe? You know, how does he control the universe? How does he hold everything in place? Newton's laws, and Isaac Newton himself, okay, was very much into, you know, one of the best-known physicists in world history. He said, you know, my laws work mathematically and scientifically. You know, Newton's laws of motion, this is basic high school physics stuff, but I can't explain the origin outside of the God of the Bible, okay? So, I mean, it's debatable whether Isaac Christian was a born-again Christian or he was just an occultist like the rest of the people involved in Invisible College in England, like I just showed you a few minutes ago. But, you know, that aside, okay, that gets to the core of what we're talking about here. Okay, the tree of knowledge of good and evil wasn't some stupid, you know, pear tree or orange tree or something like that. It was a study of numbers, and I showed you a few minutes ago. Remember the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn? Okay, you had the 10 numbers, you had the 3 columns, you had the serpent climbing it. Okay, the 3 columns, the 22 branches, you know, emblematic of the 322 of skull and bones, which I just talked about here. So hopefully all the stuff is starting to connect. Okay, what else do we have here? Symbols associated with the Masons' apron. Okay, the Masonic apron, which some people may be familiar with. You know, the Templar cross and the skull and bones. Okay. So when these Masons get on, you know, they get on the History Channel and say, oh, you know, it's just conspiracy theory. We're not devil worshippers and all this. It's right here. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I don't know how else to explain it. How else more I can explain myself. And here's another symbol right here, okay? Here's this, this again, the alchemical keys to a Masonic ritual. Okay, so here again, here's another symbol. Here you have a sun. Here's your, your all-seeing eye of Apollo, Osiris. The bursting sun rays, the illumination. Okay, and look here. We have this same little baby Lucifer flying around with a serpent around its body, just like we looked at, out of the U.S. News and World Report pictures I showed you a few minutes ago. So the point is that there's an occult conspiracy running this nation and, in fact, the world, and always has been since Genesis 3. Okay, and it's coming to a culmination or a climax right here in the not-too-distant future. Okay, and everybody's running around saying Trump, and Trump's going to save America. My ass, he's going to save America. Okay, hopefully, Trump himself, I know he's, like all of us, he's got an imperfect past, and that's all well and good. Hopefully, he's like a modern-day Nebuchadnezzar, becomes a God-fearing Christian, just like Nebuchadnezzar did back there in the book of Daniel, or the Apostle Paul, or any number of people. Okay, there's always forgiveness. Okay, in God's kingdom, except, those who speak against the Holy Ghost. If you go back to Matthew chapter 12, and now what's he talking about? He's talking about these people. He's talking about these devil worshippers. These people that climb into coffins and consider themselves, sons of Satan or Osiris. Okay, those people there's no forgiveness for. Okay, and that's clearly explained again in Matthew chapter 12. But for every other sin imaginable, there is room for forgiveness. Okay, so I suggest people start looking into that in God's Simple Salvation Plan, which is available again on my site, boxofsunglasses.com. Start looking into that, and then stop getting off this Trump train, because Trump ain't gonna stop this thing. As a matter of fact, Trump's being set up like a bowling pin. Okay, to be quite honest. Okay, and as much as I hate to say it, and I don't want to see it happen, I'm not happy about it. I just have to call it like I see it, and this is what's happening. So the upshot of tonight is that the occult conspiracy is here. It's pervasive. It's becoming more and more apparent. Okay, but the fact of the matter is, it's always been here. Okay, which is why I say, my principle number one: the Bible is the core. Has to be at the core of the quote conspiracy. You can listen to any number of these, the Jim Mars of the world, okay, the David Ikes, the Alex Jones, and all these kinds of people. And yeah, all right, they're good for factual stuff, for facts and alternative news and and putting stuff out there. But okay, so all right, so the Federal Reserve's is an illegal corporation, set up by international bankers. Okay, then so what? Who's going to stop it? Who's going to believe you? At some point, you get to the point where if people can't even understand that, and most people don't, and will never believe something that simple, how are you going to get them to believe in things like chemtrails and all this other stuff? It's going to be near impossible. How are you going to get them to believe in Satan? Okay, and things that are supernatural, again, without being born again in a spiritual sense, in the John chapter 3 sense, obviously not the skull and bones George Bush sense. It's impossible. Okay, you can have all the facts in the world. I mean, you could sit there and write, tons of books like David Icke, but so what? But what does it mean? I mean, he's I'm gonna die. He's gonna die. Everybody listening here is gonna die. Then what? Okay. So. That's really where you need to be rooted right now, and then everything else becomes child's play. Psalm chapter 2, why do the heathen rage and the nations rage against me? And God says, I'm going to laugh at them. He's going to sit there and laugh. I mean, we sitting here on this piece of dust floating through infinite nothingness are going to, in the Battle of Armageddon, after Mystery Babylon the United States is long gone. At the Battle of Armageddon, he's gonna look down and Gog and Magog and that whole thing, and he's gonna laugh. I control the universe, and you're just sitting down there on that earth. Satan is the prisoner, and Osiris, which is another name for Apollo. Okay, you're gonna challenge me. Okay. So anyway, boxofsunglasses.com, God's Simple Salvation Plan. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Hopefully some nights I just family obligations or work or whatever, I can't be here. And if not, then hopefully you can pick up the archives on my YouTube channel, which is on the home page of my site. And actually Thursday being Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. Really, blessings of God, which was the real foundation of Thanksgiving. To everybody listening. And hopefully we'll be back in 1 week next Tuesday, which I guess would have to be November 29th, 9 p.m. Eastern time, barring, again, some unforeseen event. We'll continue and perhaps start getting into the book of Revelation, more so than just 17 and 18, into the symbolism, because that's important. Because if you don't understand Revelation as it's meant to be understood, then again you could be sitting there waiting around for, comic book Antichrist, to show up in the Jerusalem temple, and you're gonna miss the fact that the economy is about to collapse, and there ain't gonna be no rapture out of it. Good night and God bless.